I'm Regina Anderson, 34, and I built my career in classified defense work, mostly behind the scenes, never flashy, but deeply respected by those who knew. For years, I supported my family quietly, covering bills, editing grad school papers, helping without ever being asked twice. But when they mocked me at a family dinner, called me a deadbeat to my face, I made a decision that changed everything. Ever been underestimated by the very people you bent over backwards to help? If so, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before we get into what happened, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand and walk away from those who refuse to see your worth, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories on boundaries, respect, and quiet justice. Because what happened next caught everyone off guard. I'm the oldest of three. Our family lived by a clear, if unspoken, hierarchy. Success looked a certain way: badges, medals, framed degrees in gold trim. If your achievements couldn't be announced at a dinner party or displayed on a mantle, they didn't count. My parents made that clear from early on. Dad served 22 years in the Navy, retired with honors. Mom worked as a high school principal. Both believed deeply in discipline, structure, and the kind of success you could salute. My brother, Billy, followed suit. He went into law enforcement straight out of high school. Wore the uniform, drove the cruiser, brought his badge to every Thanksgiving like it was part of the dress code. He wasn't particularly bright, but he looked the part: broad shoulders, firm handshake, short answers. Our parents beamed every time he walked through the door. My sister, Jenna, played the long game. Straight A's, debate team captain, student government. She got a full ride to a top graduate program in international relations, then married a Navy officer who racked up promotions like they were participation trophies. I think our parents would have paid for her wedding even if she'd picked someone else. They were that impressed by the dress blues. And then there was me. I studied computer science and engineering, but skipped the Ivy League circuit in favor of internships at niche startups. I got my degree quietly, with zero ceremony, no cap, no gown, just a scanned PDF and a login to the alumni portal. From there, I moved into research work. Some of it academic, some of it government adjacent. Mostly classified. I signed so many NDAs I started dreaming in redacted text. But it was good work. Impactful. Lucrative enough. Only no one at home seemed to care. What exactly do you do again? Mom asked once, squinting like the answer was printed on my forehead. Nothing you'd recognize, I replied. Which was true. If I told them I'd helped build the cybersecurity protocols that protected half the state's emergency infrastructure, they'd probably ask why I didn't just join the Navy instead. I didn't mind the quiet. I didn't need applause. But the thing is, they didn't just ignore me, they rewrote me. I became the daughter who'd never really found her thing. At family dinners, they'd ask Jenna about her next rotation and Billy about the new precinct. When it was my turn, there was polite silence. You still working from home? Dad would ask. Still consulting, I'd say. That was the safest word I could use. I couldn't exactly tell them I'd been flown to DC twice last year to brief a joint task force. Not without breaking federal law. Over the years, I stopped expecting them to understand. But I didn't stop showing up. When Billy got arrested for a DUI, I was the one who wired the bail money before anyone else even picked up the phone. He never said thank you. 2 weeks later, he was back in uniform, and it was like it never happened. When Jenna's husband deployed to a classified location, she had a panic attack during finals. I stayed up 3 nights in a row helping her rewrite 2 term papers. She ended up graduating with distinction. She gave the speech. My name wasn't in it. When Mom's insurance dropped coverage for a surprise hospital procedure, the bill was just under $9,000. She called me sobbing, which she never does. I told her not to worry. Paid it off that same week. She never brought it up again. I did these things not because I was a martyr, but because I still believed, deep down, that love meant showing up, even if no one noticed. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I just didn't want to become cold. I didn't want to become them. But over time, the gap widened. Their language started to shift. Billy joked once, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know, some of us have to get up for real work in the morning." Mom laughed like it was true. Dad started sending me job listings. Real ones. Full-time positions I was overqualified for by a factor of 10, with salaries that would have cut mine in half. Jenna got the worst of it. She never said anything overt, but she stopped inviting me to things. Her bridal shower. A promotion dinner. I only found out about her baby announcement because a cousin posted the ultrasound photo. I started to recognize the pattern. If you didn't look the part, you weren't part of the story. And without realizing it, my family had written me out. I kept showing up anyway. Brought gifts. Listened to the stories. Asked the questions no one asked me. When I did talk about my work, I kept it surface level, consulting, research, defense adjacent. One time, Jenna's husband asked to follow up. Just one. I told him I'd worked on a threat mitigation system. His expression changed instantly. Cyber division, he asked, like he suddenly saw me. Something like that, I said. He nodded slowly, but didn't press. I figured it would end there. Still, nothing changed. The next month, my dad introduced me at a family cookout as our daughter who works in tech. I think they didn't mean it cruelly, but the indifference had sharp edges. You learn to stop bleeding out over people who think your wounds are just quirks. You learn to let them believe what they want until it's easier to stop offering the truth altogether. There was a moment, about a year before everything changed, when I nearly walked away for good. Billy had just made sergeant and threw himself a party. Full turnout, big banners, speeches, the whole thing. At one point, someone handed him the mic and asked him to thank the people who'd helped him the most. He thanked Jenna. Thanked Mom and Dad. Thanked his old lieutenant. He didn't mention me. Not once. I'd been the one to clear his record. Quietly paid the lawyer to make sure that DUI never saw daylight. That night, as I drove home, I realized that in their eyes, I was useful but not visible. Present but uncredited. And the most painful part was knowing that no matter what I accomplished, no matter how big the win, it would never look like success to them. I told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't need a family who understood. I had mentors. Colleagues. Contracts that paid well and teams who respected me. But that's the thing about family. It doesn't need to be logical to hurt. What I didn't know then was that everything they thought they knew about me was about to get rewritten. Not by anything I said. Not by a fight or a confession or a desperate attempt to finally be seen. It would take someone in uniform. Someone they already respected. And a single word. Spoken in front of everyone. Ma'am. But that part comes later. The first time I realized things had shifted, it was Thanksgiving. I'd driven 2 hours in the rain to get there on time, walked in with a bottle of wine and my usual hope that this year might feel different. It didn't. They were already halfway through drinks. Jenna's husband, Adam, was standing near the fireplace in full uniform, dress whites, ribbons, polished shoes. The whole thing looked like a promotional photo for the Navy, except it was happening in our living room. Dad was right beside him, recounting the story of Adam's last deployment like he'd been there himself. Bronze Star, Combat V, he said, voice full of pride. My son-in-law doesn't flinch when things get real. He clapped Adam on the back, eyes scanning the room to make sure everyone was impressed. I stood just behind the coat rack, still holding the wine. No one noticed I was there. Eventually, Mom spotted me and waved me over. There you are. We were just about to eat. No hello. No how was the drive. She pointed toward the kitchen. Set that on the counter, will you? Dinner was loud, like always. Everyone talked over each other, career updates, baby plans, political rants. I sat between Uncle Dave and one of Billy's high school buddies who apparently had nowhere else to go. When I tried to join the conversation, Billy cut me off with a joke. So, still unemployed or just between coffee breaks? It landed harder than it should have. I didn't even have a chance to respond before Mom laughed and said, Billy, in that half-hearted tone she used when she didn't actually want him to stop. I took a sip of water. No one corrected him. No one asked what I was really doing, which, at that time, was working on a classified threat assessment for a major defense contractor. I'd pulled 3 all-nighters that week. But to them, I might as well have been watching Netflix in my pajamas. Jenna didn't say anything. just focused on cutting her turkey into perfect bites, while Adam nodded along to Dad's retelling of someone else's war stories. I got through the meal without snapping. I helped clean up, washed dishes, even stayed for pie. When I finally left, it was raining again. The whole drive home, I thought about how easy it had become for them to treat me like furniture, there, but not part of the scene. It wasn't always like that. There was a time when my parents asked questions, even if they didn't understand the answers. But something changed when Jenna got married. Suddenly, her husband was the benchmark. He had the medals, the discipline, the respect. And even though I knew more about national security infrastructure than anyone else at that table, none of it counted unless it came with a salute. Mom started inviting me less. I didn't get a save the date for Jenna's promotion dinner. I only found out because a coworker posted photos, Jenna in a sleek navy dress, standing beside Adam and a small group of friends at some country club banquet hall. My parents were there too. So was Billy. My name wasn't even mentioned in the caption. At first, I told myself it was an oversight. People forget things. Plans shift. But then it happened again. Family brunch for Dad's birthday. I found out about it the day before when Jenna sent a text asking if I was coming after all. I scrolled back. No previous invite. No heads up. When I replied that I hadn't known it was happening, she sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. I showed up anyway. Sat at the far end of the table and made polite conversation with cousins I barely knew. Watched my father unwrap a plaque from Adam, something from his last deployment. It said honor, courage, commitment. Dad got choked up. This means a lot, he said, gripping Adam's hand like he'd raised him himself. I'd brought him a signed first edition of a naval history book he used to quote all the time. He opened it without comment, set it aside, and moved on to the next gift. Billy made a joke about how some people buy gifts, others collect dust. Another laugh. Another moment where I disappeared in plain sight. Adam never joined in. But he didn't step in either. He was polite always. But distant, like he was waiting for me to explain myself. He asked once, in passing, "What's your day-to-day like?" I gave him a generic answer. He nodded, said "sounds interesting," and left it there. I couldn't tell if he didn't care, or if he was trying not to say the wrong thing in front of my family. Either way, it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I stopped expecting warmth. I stopped thinking they'd ask. What bothered me wasn't that they misunderstood what I did. It was that they didn't want to understand. They had the version of me they preferred, directionless, aimless, vaguely unemployed, and they stuck to it. It fit better with their narrative. Billy leaned into it completely. Started calling me consultant, with air quotes. Told people I worked from her couch and was great at Googling things. At one point he asked me, dead serious, if I was on a sabbatical from actual employment. Didn't know you could take a break from not having a job, he said. I didn't answer. I didn't bother. It got easier to stay home. To claim work conflicts when invites came, if they came at all. I told myself I was busy. And I was. But deep down, I just couldn't stand being edited out of my own family story. The final straw came in spring. Jenna and Adam were hosting a dinner to celebrate Adam's new promotion. Captain. A big deal. Formal affair. Dress code, RSVP catered. I wasn't invited. Not officially. Not even through Jenna. I found out because the caterer texted me by mistake. They'd confused me with Jenna's coworker who shared my name. The message was meant to confirm a head count. When I replied and explained the mix-up, the caterer apologized. Thought you were one of the sisters, she said. I didn't correct her. I didn't attend. I stayed home that night, ordered takeout, and read through the latest round of internal security audits from a client under federal oversight. Work that would eventually be cited in a policy briefing. Work that mattered. When photos from the dinner surfaced online, I looked at them longer than I should have. Adam in uniform again, standing next to Jenna in a tailored navy jumpsuit. Dad giving a toast. Mom teary-eyed. Billy in the background with his beer and his badge. Everyone clapping. I wasn't there. But I knew the story they were telling. The responsible son. The accomplished daughter. The strong son-in-law. The respectable family. And me? I wasn't even part of the caption. Jenna's birthday dinner was held at a rented banquet hall just outside the city, the kind with polished floors, high ceilings, and enough mirrors to make it feel more crowded than it actually was. The invitation had come late, 2 days before the event. A group text from Mom, sent more out of obligation than enthusiasm. I almost didn't go. I had a project deadline that Monday, a deliverable under NDA with a strict handoff schedule. But something told me to show up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe spite. Maybe I just wanted to see how invisible I really was. I bought Jenna a hardcover she'd once mentioned in passing during a phone call last year, one of the few real conversations we'd had. Wrapped it in simple blue paper with no bow. Showed up 15 minutes early, parked in the far corner of the lot, and walked in like I didn't already regret it. The room was already buzzing. Long rectangular tables with gold runners, buffet trays steaming at the far end, a little banner near the entrance that read Commander's Wife and Still Fabulous. I didn't recognize half the people there. Military colleagues. Adam's peers. Jenna's friends from grad school. The ones I did recognize didn't seem to notice I'd arrived. Mom spotted me first. She walked over briskly, hands folded like she was hosting a donor event. "You came," she said, with the kind of surprise that wasn't quite positive. "Got the invite," I replied, holding up the gift. She took it without looking. "I'll put this with the others." Then she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Just don't make tonight about you, okay? We already have enough freeloaders in the family." I blinked. "Sorry. Just behave. Don't get sensitive. It's Jenna's night." Before I could say anything, Billy walked by holding a drink. "Look who finally left her apartment," he said, smirking. Deadbeat made it after all. The words hit harder than I expected, mostly because they didn't sound like a joke. Not even the lazy kind. It was casual, dismissive, practiced. A few people around him laughed. Not loudly, but enough. I didn't respond. I just walked past them to find a seat near the end of one of the tables, behind a group of guests I didn't know. I stayed there quietly, sipping flat club soda, listening to conversations that didn't include me. Dinner was called a few minutes later. People lined up by rank, almost subconsciously: military, family, extended guests. I waited near the back, filled my plate with small portions, and sat in the corner near the window. I tried to keep my head down. Just survive the next hour. Then leave. Adam hadn't arrived yet. Everyone was talking about how he was coming straight from base, how he might be in uniform. Mom mentioned it 3 times. "He's been promoted to XO. They don't let just anyone take that post," she said, loud enough for half the room to hear. Dad nodded proudly. "Officer of that caliber, they should have fast-tracked him sooner." Jenna blushed in that polished, perfect way she always did, modest and self-satisfied all at once. "It's not just his medals," she said. "It's how he leads. People trust him." I took a bite of salad and didn't say anything. Then the door opened. Adam stepped in wearing his formal Navy uniform. Ribbons lined his chest. Gold trim. The room went still for a second, not because they were surprised, but because it made everything feel official. He took a few steps inside, scanning the crowd. Then he saw me. And stopped. I thought maybe I imagined it at first. But then he straightened. Slowed. And walked toward me, eyes steady. When he reached the table, he paused just a few feet away. "Ma'am," he said, clear and loud. Then he saluted. You could hear silverware clink down. Someone gasped. I think it was Aunt Marlene. Dad dropped his fork onto his plate. Jenna, halfway through a sentence, froze with her mouth slightly open. The salute wasn't casual. It wasn't performative. It was formal, textbook. And it was directed at me. I nodded slowly. "Lieutenant Commander," I said, because I didn't know what else to do. It came out flat, instinctive. Adam held the salute another second, then dropped it. Still looking at me. "Wasn't sure I'd run into you here," he said quietly. I wasn't sure either. He glanced at the seat next to me. "May I?" I nodded again. He pulled out the chair and sat down. The noise in the room didn't come back right away. People were still watching, listening, trying to understand what they'd just seen. Jenna walked over after a minute, stiff smile on her face. "You made it," she said to Adam. "Of course," he said, turning slightly in his chair but not getting up. "Didn't want to miss your big night." She didn't look at me, just reached down, squeezed his shoulder, then walked back toward the head of the table. Dad didn't speak to me the rest of the night. Neither did Mom. Billy kept looking at Adam like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. I stayed until the cake was served. Watched people slowly recalibrate their behavior, laugh a little less loudly, avoid eye contact with me, whisper behind napkins. I knew what they were wondering. Why would a decorated officer salute the person they all called a deadbeat? Adam didn't explain. Neither did I. But I could feel the shift. A thread snapping. For the first time in years, they didn't know how to talk about me. And that silence felt better than any apology I never got. I left before the cake was cut. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't wait for a ride. Just walked out, calm and quiet, like I was late for something more important, which, for the first time in a long time, felt true. The cold air outside hit me harder than I expected. I'd been holding tension in my shoulders all evening. I could feel it now as a dull ache running down my spine. I crossed the parking lot without looking back, keys already in hand. No one followed. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a minute. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. Then I drove home in silence. No music. No GPS. Just the low hum of tires against asphalt and the replay of that one word. Ma'am. The way Adam had said it, like it meant something. Like it came from knowledge, not obligation. I didn't tell anyone about it afterward. Not my coworkers. Not my neighbors. I didn't answer texts. Ignored a call from Mom the next morning. Let Jenna's voicemail go to inbox. A week passed. Then a text came from Jenna. Just one line. "What exactly do you do?" No punctuation. No greeting. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and sliding it across the counter. I didn't answer. Because what could I say? "Oh, nothing much. Just managing risk exposure for systems your husband's unit depends on to not get killed?" Even that would have violated 3 NDAs. What I could have said, what I wanted to say, was that I'd spent the last 4 years supporting defense contractors on projects they would never hear about. Remote systems audits. Vulnerability testing. Infrastructure simulations designed to assess exactly how long a critical operation could survive a coordinated cyber attack. Last quarter, I'd worked directly on a secure communications protocol Adam's team was now using on the field. He knew. Not the full details. But enough. And when he saw me, he saw something they never did. I wasn't just his wife's older sister. I was someone who'd helped keep him alive. I didn't respond to Jenna's message because I finally understood that an explanation wouldn't change anything. If they couldn't recognize my value without credentials stamped in gold, they didn't deserve access to what I'd built. For years, I told myself their dismissal didn't bother me. I said it wasn't personal, that they just didn't get it, that I couldn't expect people with traditional careers to understand classified work. But that night at the banquet, watching my dad's fork hit his plate and my sister's face drain of color, I realized something that rattled me. I had let it happen. Not the disrespect. That was theirs to own. But the silence? The way I shrank into the background every time they made a joke, or rewrote the narrative, or left me out of conversations I should have been at the center of. That part was mine. I let them talk over me because it felt easier than trying to justify a job I wasn't allowed to talk about. I played along with the jokes because I didn't want to start fights that would go nowhere. I let them exclude me from things because being forgotten hurt less than being mocked. But silence, over time, is a kind of permission. And I had given them plenty. That realization sat with me for days. It followed me into my work, through late-night check-ins with remote teams and quiet early mornings reading reports by the glow of a second monitor. I couldn't stop thinking about all the moments I'd swallowed my own worth just to keep the peace. Like the time I paid Mom's surprise hospital bill and said nothing when she thanked Dad for figuring it out. Or the year I edited Jenna's entire graduate thesis while she told our relatives she'd done it all alone. Or the day Billy asked to borrow $2,000 to get out of a jam, and I wired it before he even explained. He never paid me back. Never mentioned it again. In those moments, I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it for recognition. But when I looked at it clearly, the truth hit harder than I wanted to admit. I hadn't just been helping. I'd been auditioning, trying to earn a seat at a table that had already decided I didn't belong. And when Adam saluted me, without fanfare, without explanation, it broke something open. Not because I needed his approval, but because it was the first time in years someone in that room acknowledged what I was actually worth. He didn't salute me as Jenna's sister, or as someone who happened to be nearby. He saluted me as a colleague, a contributor, a quiet operator doing real work. That salute wasn't for them. It was for me. And it made their silence louder than ever. Mom tried again a few days later. Left a message about how things got a little tense at the party, and maybe we should have a family dinner to talk things through. Talk things through. Like it was a miscommunication. Like I'd taken things too personally. I didn't call back. Billy didn't say anything. No surprise there. Jenna sent another message a few days later. Adam won't tell me. But I think I messed up. Just, if you ever want to talk. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question. But I read it twice. Then deleted it. Because by then, something had already shifted. I'd spent too long lowering the volume on myself just to make other people more comfortable. And now? Now I was done speaking softly. The next invite was for Easter brunch. Group text, same as always. Mom signed it Love, the real adults, like it was some kind of inside joke. Jenna sent a follow-up a few hours later. Hope you can come. It'd be nice to just move past everything. I stared at the message for a few minutes before locking my phone and setting it face down on the table. I didn't respond. 3 days later, a second text arrived. Just let us know one way or the other. Mom's getting stressed. No punctuation again. Like every request was half a command. I didn't answer that one either. On Easter morning, I woke up to photos on the family thread. Billy standing behind the grill, tongs in one hand, beer in the other. Jenna with her arm around Mom. Dad in his standard navy blazer, making a toast in the backyard like he was hosting a diplomatic summit. Someone captioned it, "Strong family, stronger traditions." I muted the thread. By the time Jenna texted that evening, did we do something that bad? I'd already gone for a walk, made dinner, and finished reviewing a 57-page security audit for a private contractor that would never know my name. I didn't answer. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't punishment. It was a decision. For years, I'd been orbiting around people who had built a version of me that fit their needs. Quiet, available, always in the background. Helpful, but not visible. Capable, but not quite successful. They needed me small so they could feel big. And I had let them. I made that possible by showing up. By softening myself. By absorbing their digs and smiling through dinners I didn't belong at. I gave them the benefit of the doubt so many times I lost count. But that night, after Adam's salute, after the stunned silence that followed, I saw it all clearly for the first time. They didn't misunderstand me. They just didn't care to understand me. And that difference mattered. The next time an invite came, I didn't even open the message. That week, Mom sent a photo of an old scrapbook she found in the attic. Look what I came across. Your science fair project from 5th grade. You were always our little genius. No mention of the birthday dinner. No acknowledgement of what she said to me that night. Just a carefully chosen memory, soft and sweet, with the edges sanded down. I didn't reply. A few days later, Billy posted a photo from his latest work training, tactical gear, squad formation, thumbs up. The caption read, "Some of us are too busy for family. Some of us serve." The comments were full of fire emojis and "Thank you for your service." No one mentioned me. But it didn't feel like it was meant to be subtle. I didn't respond to that either. Then came Jenna. She called once. I didn't pick up. She texted twice. First, ignoring everyone isn't a solution. Then, you're being kind of dramatic. I reread that second one a few times. Dramatic was the word they always used when I pushed back. When I asked to be treated equally. When I challenged the way they dismissed my work. It was their go-to response for discomfort. Call it dramatic. Shut it down. But this time, I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. Because I didn't owe them an explanation anymore. A week later, Mom sent a long message, long enough that it got clipped and had to be expanded. It started with "family sticks together," then went on to say how everyone's doing their best and how we can't change the past, but we can move forward. She ended with, "Don't throw everything away over one bad night." I almost laughed. They had erased me from family photos, family dinners, family stories, slowly, steadily, over years. And the one night someone else saw me for who I actually was, that was the problem? I didn't answer her message. I went back to work. During the day, I met with a defense contractor on a third-tier airbase. In the evening, I interviewed 2 junior analysts for a program I'd helped architect but would never put on a resume. At night, I drafted a report that would eventually pass across the desk of someone who wore stars on their shoulders. They wouldn't know my name, but they'd follow the protocol I designed. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. I started filling my calendar with things that felt real. Dinner with colleagues who respected my input. Quiet evenings with people who asked actual questions instead of reciting bios. Weekends that didn't revolve around waiting to be included. The absence of my family didn't create a void. It created space. That space filled quickly. By midsummer, I was consulting with 2 new firms, both of which extended long-term offers. One was remote, one required relocation. I chose the latter. A change of scene. A change of story. When I announced the move on LinkedIn, the post got over 2,000 reactions, former coworkers, mentors, classmates, all offering congratulations. Billy didn't like the post. Jenna didn't comment. Mom didn't message. Which told me everything I needed to know. A week before the move, a card arrived at my apartment. Handwritten. No return address, but the handwriting was Jenna's. It said, "I think I finally get it. I'm sorry for all the times I didn't ask. I'm sorry for not seeing what was right in front of me. I know it's too late, but I'm proud of you. And I hope someday I can earn back even part of your trust." No excuses. No defense. Just that. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't frame it. I didn't throw it out. I kept it tucked inside my desk drawer, under a notebook full of classified notes and redacted to-do lists. Because maybe someday I'll want to look at it again. And maybe not. But for now, I'm focused on building a life that doesn't rely on permission. Or apologies. I moved out of state by the end of summer. New city, new contract, new walls that didn't remember all the versions of me I used to apologize for. The agency wasn't glamorous from the outside. Industrial park layout, no signage, gray carpets that looked like they hadn't been replaced in a decade. But inside? Inside, it was different. Quiet halls, low-key conversations, and projects that mattered in ways you couldn't talk about out loud. I had my own office. Not big, but mine. 3 weeks in, I was asked to lead a special security review, part of an internal sweep tied to vulnerabilities someone else missed. We had 2 weeks to report. No leaks. No mistakes. I pulled 14-hour days, stayed late on Fridays, came in early on Sundays. No one micromanaged me. They just trusted me to handle it. And I did. When the report was submitted, it was clean, airtight, and flagged 3 critical issues that no one else had caught. 2 of those issues were patched within 48 hours. The third triggered a protocol rewrite for an entire division. My director stopped me in the hallway the following Monday. "We're moving you up," he said simply. "Not because of that report. Because of how you did it." That's how I got the title change, lead systems advisor. Not bad for someone whose own brother still thought I worked in customer support. By fall, word had started circulating. Not publicly. Not online. But inside the family. Apparently Adam had spoken up at another dinner I wasn't invited to. Someone made a joke about me being too good for brunch now, and Adam cut in. "You do know what she actually does, right?" he said. That was it. Just a question. I heard it secondhand from a cousin who reached out months later. Said the room got quiet. Said Dad didn't say much after that. Billy, who usually filled the space with something smug, reportedly left early. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something closer to neutrality. It wasn't vindication. Just math. They'd underestimated me for years. Assumed silence meant irrelevance. Now the equation didn't balance, and they didn't know how to solve it. Meanwhile, my work kept growing. A former colleague recommended me for a closed-door summit, one of those industry events without a website. The kind where phones get sealed in opaque bags and attendees are on a first-name-only basis. The panel was on information integrity across supply chains. I didn't present under my full name, just a code name and a number. But afterward, 3 women in the audience came up to me and asked to connect. Said they'd never seen someone walk that line, technical and strategic, with so much clarity. I gave them my burner email. 2 months later, I mentored one of them through a proposal that got her hired at one of the top 3 defense analytics firms in the country. That same season, I was invited to a second summit. Smaller. Higher stakes. I was the only woman on the panel. The only person under 40. The moderator introduced me with one sentence: "Her work keeps things from breaking where it matters most." That line stayed with me, because that's what I'd always been doing. Quietly. Without applause. Without credit. Keeping things from breaking. Keeping people safe, even when they didn't know they were at risk. One night in early winter, I stayed late reviewing a vulnerability report that traced back to a civilian subcontractor. It was the kind of hole that could lead to a cascade failure across 2 systems. I flagged it, annotated it, rerouted it to the correct protocol group. As I signed the file, I thought about Adam. About that salute. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. From someone who knew the stakes. Who'd seen firsthand what could go wrong when people got too comfortable with not asking questions. That night, I got an unexpected email. Not from Jenna. Not from my parents. From Adam. The subject line was blank. The message was short. Just wanted you to know. They're starting to listen. Slowly. But they are. There was no signature. No follow-up. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. Later that week, I had coffee with a junior analyst on our team, fresh out of grad school, nervous in all the ways I used to be. She asked if it ever got easier. I didn't lie. It gets different, I said. And you get better at trusting your own weight. She nodded like she understood, even if she didn't fully. But I could see it. The edge of confidence forming. That quiet fire. I sent her a follow-up email later that night. A few resources. A recommendation. A message she'd be able to reread when the work got heavy. Helping her felt better than any reunion I wasn't attending. That month, I started blocking off 1 hour every Friday for mentorship sessions. Nothing official. Just a standing window. If someone booked it, they got my full attention. If no one did, I used the time to write. Not about family. Not about wounds. Just about systems that worked. Ones that didn't. I built things. Strengthened the things that mattered. And the rest? I let it go. Because transformation isn't always loud. It doesn't always show up with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it looks like a quiet inbox. A muted thread. A door you choose not to open, even when you still have the key. And sometimes, it looks like an empty room and your own voice, finally loud enough to fill it. It was almost spring when Jenna reached out again. The message came on a Tuesday, buried under work emails and system alerts. The subject line was blank. The body just said, "I know you don't owe me a reply. But I'm sorry. For everything." I sat with it for a while. Not because I didn't know what to say, just because I wasn't sure it was worth saying anything at all. For months, I'd been building something without her. Without any of them. And it worked. My life was functional, full. There were people I trusted, routines that made sense, and work that respected me without needing a backstory. I didn't need Jenna. But that wasn't the same as not caring. I left the message unread for 2 days. Then I replied, "What exactly are you sorry for?" She responded the same afternoon. No defensiveness. No qualifiers. For believing what was easier to believe. For letting people minimize you because it made our lives more comfortable. For laughing when I should have asked. For not knowing how much you were carrying, and for not trying to find out. It was the first time she'd said anything without hiding behind emojis or excuses. The tone was different. Measured. Real. I agreed to a phone call. We didn't set a time. She just said, "Call me when it doesn't feel like a burden." I called her 2 nights later. She picked up on the second ring, quiet at first. I could hear her breathing, like she wasn't sure where to start. I should have seen it sooner, she said finally. Adam told me after that night. Not everything. Just enough. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to keep going. He said he'd never seen that kind of work outside of combat ops. That your name came up in secure briefings. He didn't tell me details. He couldn't. But he said if I knew even half of what you do, I'd never call you a deadbeat again. I let out a short breath. He saluted me. I know, she said. He wouldn't stop talking about it on the ride home. Said you deserved it more than most officers he's ever served with. There was a pause. Then she added, I didn't know what to do with that. Yeah, I figured. It made me realize how often I've leaned on the easy version of you. The one who just works online or has projects. I never asked the hard questions. And when Mom or Billy made comments, I didn't push back. I let it happen. I'm sorry for that. The silence stretched between us again. Not heavy. Just unfamiliar. I'm not mad at you, I said. But I need you to know. I'm not who I used to be. I don't have the bandwidth to manage other people's comfort anymore. I get that. I need boundaries. Tell me what they are. I told her. No more digs. No more silence when other people minimized me. No more pretending the past didn't happen. If she wanted to build something with me now, it had to be from here, not from some cleaned-up version of what was. She agreed. She didn't argue. She didn't ask for credit for apologizing. She just said, okay, that's fair. We stayed on the phone another 20 minutes. Caught up, carefully. She told me she'd started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped military spouses transition to civilian life. Said it made her realize how many people are out there doing invisible work that no one talks about. Sound familiar, she said, half laughing. A little. After we hung up, I didn't feel relieved. Or emotional. Just calm. Like something had finally stopped spinning. Over the next few weeks, we talked occasionally. Nothing deep. Nothing forced. She sent me an article about women in defense contracting. I sent her a podcast on leadership training. We didn't rehash old wounds. We didn't pretend they'd healed completely either. It was cautious. Cordial. But it was real. And real felt like a good place to start. At one point, she asked if I'd ever consider coming to another family dinner. Not right away. Just sometime. I don't know, I said honestly. That's okay, she replied. I just want you to know you'd be welcome. Even if it's uncomfortable for everyone else. I didn't say yes. But I didn't shut it down either. And that was the difference. Because for the first time, she wasn't trying to pull me back into the old narrative. She was offering something new. Smaller. Humble. A space I could enter on my terms. Later that month, I sent her a photo from a leadership panel I spoke at, me, standing next to 3 other women in the field, holding a plaque with no title on it. Just initials. Just contribution. She replied, they're lucky to have you. I didn't expect the words to mean much. But they did. Not because I needed validation. I'd moved past that. But because it was the first time I saw her look at me without needing to see herself reflected back. And that, finally, was enough. These days, my life is quiet. Not small quiet. The difference matters. I still work in the same field. Still show up to meetings where full names aren't used, where half the participants aren't on paper, where the work matters more than the credit. Some weeks are dense with analysis and red lines. Others are spent in briefing rooms, scanning through other people's blind spots before they become headlines. I like it that way. No one here asks for a resume summary over drinks. They don't need to. You earn your space by knowing what you're talking about. That's it. When I do speak, people listen. Not because I talk louder now. Because they've learned not to assume quiet means uncertain. Last week, I trained a team of new analysts, sharp, curious, full of all the ambition I used to keep to myself. One of them stayed after the session ended and asked me if I ever felt overlooked when I started out. I didn't give her the whole story. Just said, I used to mistake silence for peace. It wasn't. It was erasure. She nodded like she understood, even if the edges hadn't reached her yet. She will. My office isn't flashy. No windows. But the light's clean and the desk is mine. There's a small framed photo of a coastline from a trip I took alone last year. And next to it, folded carefully into the corner of a drawer, is that old note from Jenna. Still creased. Still legible. We talk now occasionally. We're not close. But there's space between us again, real, shared space, not built on guilt or tension or nostalgia. Just mutual respect, measured in small exchanges that neither of us rush. She stopped calling me dramatic. She stopped letting other people speak for me. And when our paths do cross, she listens first. I haven't been to a full family gathering since the dinner. I doubt I'll ever go back in the way they expect. But I did see my parents once, not long ago. It wasn't planned. I was speaking on a private panel in DC, small group, closed attendance, mostly agency people and strategic contractors. One of the logistics coordinators was the daughter of an old neighbor. She mentioned the event to her parents, who mentioned it to my mom. Somehow, they found out I'd be there. I walked into the building that morning like I always do, badge in hand, notes in my bag, ready to explain the parts of the system no one else had time to map out. I was halfway through the first coffee when I saw them, my parents, standing quietly near the back wall. They didn't approach me, didn't wave, just stood there, listening. I don't think they understood everything I said, but they didn't interrupt. They didn't leave early. And when it was over, my dad waited until the hallway cleared, then stepped forward. "You looked like you belonged up there," he said. I nodded. I did. He didn't say much else. Just nodded back and said, "We didn't know." "I know," I said. That was the problem. We didn't hug. We didn't rehash the past. But for the first time, he didn't look at me like a puzzle he had to solve. He looked at me like someone he had to respect, whether he understood the blueprint or not. Billy hasn't reached out. That used to sting. Now it doesn't. Some people build their identities by standing on top of others. If you remove yourself from their foundation, they don't collapse. They just scramble to find someone else to step on. That's not my business anymore. And Adam? We've exchanged a few emails. Professional. Occasionally personal. He asked me for a resource recommendation once. Said one of his officers wanted to transition into the private sector and didn't know where to start. I sent him a name. Then added, "And thank you for that night." He replied, "Wasn't doing you a favor. Just showing the room who is actually holding the structure up." That's the thing about real respect. It's quiet, but it changes the temperature of the entire room. When I look back on that dinner, the awkward silence, the dropped fork, the frozen expressions, I don't feel anger. I don't even feel triumphant. I just feel sure. That moment wasn't about vindication. It wasn't about someone finally saying what I wanted to hear. It was about the truth speaking louder than the story they built around me. A story where I was the underachiever, the outlier, the girl who worked online and didn't quite measure up. That story unraveled the second someone from their world showed up and saluted me like I was part of his. That's what changed everything. Not the rank. Not the uniform. The recognition. The pause. The shift. Sometimes justice doesn't show up in a courtroom. Or a confrontation. Sometimes it walks in quietly, salutes the person no one noticed, and says, "Ma'am." And in that silence that follows, everything rewrites itself. So, no, I'm not looking for reunion. Or redemption arcs. I'm not trying to be understood by people who once called me a burden while taking what I gave them without hesitation. What I want is what I already have. A life I built without applause. A voice I didn't trade for acceptance. And a peace I didn't have to beg for. That, to me, is legacy. Not what people say when you're gone, but what you carry without needing them to see it. Thanks for sticking with me through the end. Have you ever had someone completely misjudge you, only to realize too late who you really were? Or maybe you've had to walk away from family just to protect your peace. Drop your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if this story resonated with you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories about standing tall, even when it means standing alone. Sometimes the best kind of justice is quiet.